There was a moment when I knew for sure what I was going to do with my life. And I just had one problem. I had to break it to my dad. And I didn't think he was going to be too happy with this because I had decided at 17 years old that I was going to be a playwright. And my dad, I don't think, had that dream for his oldest son when he moved us from India to America. He thought I would be doing something that would make money. And he thought being a playwright wouldn't make any money. And I didn't really have the knowledge to disagree with him, but I knew what I wanted to do. And so I told him, and he thought about it, to his credit, for one day. And then he came to me and he said, I figured out the perfect thing for you to do in the summer between your junior and senior years. I said, great. Thinking in my head, wow, he accepted this really fast. I'm impressed. He said, you should go to engineering camp at the Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. And so I said, 3 weeks without my parents at a summer camp? That sounds kind of awesome. I'm going to do it. So I went to engineering camp, and I showed up, and the first day when I showed up, we've all had those moments in our lives where you get into a room and you look around and you think, why am I here? These are not people like me. I don't belong here. And I had that moment for the first time, really. But I was okay. I kind of went there. I sat down at the group, and the very first thing they did, is they broke us all up into a team. And they said, here are your 3 other team members. And then they said, here's your project that you're going to work on for the next 3 weeks. I said, okay. We sat down, and the other 3 started immediately talking about how they were going to solve this challenge. And I think I said something. I don't remember what I said, but I said something that revealed to them that I was not going to be a good team member. I was not going to be useful. And 1 minute later, approximately, they said, we don't need you, you're not useful. So I was abandoned by my team on the first day of engineering camp. And I went back to the dorm that night, and this was unfortunately before streaming, so I couldn't just binge watch a show. I had to do something. So that night I decided I was going to become the cruise director of engineering camp. And what that meant was I was going to organize ultimate frisbee competitions, open mic nights, poker, spelunking. I mean, we were going to have a good time. Because if I was stuck here for 3 weeks and I had nothing to do, I was going to have fun. And so I became the minister of fun. That was my job, my self-appointed job. And so the end of the program came, and we all presented our things, and the whole team is up there, and they're presenting, right? And I'm like standing behind my whole team, kind of, pretending like I'd done something, even though obviously I hadn't. And then they voted on the best projects. Luckily, we didn't win, because I would have felt bad for winning with not doing anything, right? But then they had a couple of individual awards. And one of the individual awards was the Good Citizen Award. And I won the Good Citizen Award. And I was so excited with this thing. And I came back from Rose-Hulman in the airport and the baggage claim, and my dad was over there and I was over here. And you know those Bollywood movies where people are running towards each other? We had one of those moments, right? He's got a big smile, I've got a big smile for the wrong reasons, right? Because he thinks, oh, I fixed this. He's going to be an engineer now. My son's going to actually make a living. This is going to be great. I'm a great parent. And I understand that now because I'm a dad, right? And I have teenagers. But then I told him I won the Good Citizen Award, and he said, so you're going to be an engineer? And I said, no, I hate engineering. And he said, well, okay, maybe this didn't work. But it was years later that I told somebody that story, and they said, so you went to engineering camp for 17-year-old boys, and you won Miss Congeniality. And I said, yeah, that's pretty much what happened. But it taught me something really important about life and about my career. I did not end up becoming a playwright. And I did not become an engineer, obviously. And my dad's happy now with what I'm doing because I am making a living, so that's good. We're all good there. But what I realized is that the people who understand people always win. The people who understand people always win. And this has become one of my mantras that I say over and over again because it powers so much of what we do and how we understand the world. And we're here at a futuristic event talking about the future. And that's what I'm going to share with you. And that's what Henry's going to share with you when he comes out as well. And when we think about the future, one of the big problems is we just don't know what to believe. Because we're in the midst of what I always have called the modern believability crisis. And the modern believability crisis says we just don't know who's telling us the truth. Is Evian actually bottled in Switzerland? Or is it just, water from somewhere else? And Evian is naive spelled backwards. And is that a conspiracy theory? We don't know, right? We can't tell. This is a trick. Which one of these faces is a real person? Actually, none of them are. They're all AI generated. But they all look like they could be a real person. And so we don't know. We're worried. that we're being manipulated at all times. We also don't feel good. There's all these ads that come out. Hotness comes in all shapes and sizes, and then this ad shows you 4 women who are the same size. I am not the target audience for this ad, and I feel less hot looking at it. That's a problem. That's what we're surrounded by. Cocoa Krispies, all natural? How? Now look, I come from the world of marketing and advertising. We're storytellers, right? So maybe if we just told a better story, people would get it. Until eventually they figure it out and they're like, wait, that's not real. That's not true, right? That's the problem, that we see this stuff all over the time. So look, we can't be manipulated by numbers, right? If we just put numbers in front of people, that'll be authoritative. Because we just got to put the right statistic in front of people. But it doesn't have a source on it, right? So like I could make up any stat I want and just put it up there and you think, oh, that's a stat. Not necessarily a true stat, but it's a stat. And so our challenge, our shared challenge becomes, how do we find the truth? And not only that, but how do we find the truth and see what other people don't see? I call that non-obvious thinking. That's my lingo, right? For it. But the idea is, how do you become that person who sees all of these things that no one else sees? Because if you can do that, you can win. And remember, I come from an industry where that is your currency. Being the most creative person, that's what you're being paid for in the world of advertising and marketing. And unfortunately for me, there's a certain type of person in that world who's paid to do that. They're called a creative. It's a noun. And it's on their business card. And in ad agencies, there are people like that. And then there's the other guy. And unfortunately for me, I was the other guy. And it really used to bother me because I thought to myself, I'm creative. I'm working in a creative place. But my business card does not say that I'm allowed to be creative. In fact, it makes me feel like I shouldn't be creative. So what can I do? And my answer to what I could do came from one moment when I was living in Sydney, Australia. And it was during the Olympics. And during the Olympics, I went to this one event. It's amazing. You know, actually, it's many events all at once. It's track and field. So if you've ever gone to one of these meets, you see lots of stuff. It's literally like a circus because it's a round circle and there's one event over here, one event over here. It's amazing. And there was one event, the high jump. And the high jump for years and years and years was a pretty logical thing. People would see the bar, they'd be like, okay, trying to jump over it the best way I can. Some people would run up to this thing and they would kind of put one leg over and jump. Other people would kind of like vault themselves over. Everybody had a weird technique of doing it that worked for them. But in 1968, one guy, one athlete, came along and said, you know, I'm going to run over that bar and I'm going to jump over it backwards. Backwards! His name was Dick Fosbury. And he became famous for a technique that's now called the Fosbury flop, which is flopping over the bar. He won the gold medal that year, and every athlete since jumps over that bar using the Fosbury flop technique. When I saw that and I heard that story for the first time, I thought to myself, what kind of person sees the way everyone's been jumping over a bar and thinks to themselves, I'm going to turn around and jump over that backwards? What kind of person thinks that way? And my immediate thought after that is, I want to be that person. That's who I want to be. That's how I want to think. And the thing is, I don't have special training to be able to do that necessarily. I just have intention to want to do it. And what I've become really good at is not doing the thing that we're all really good at, which is sending that message and looking at nothing. Instead, I pay attention to the world. And that's a big part of the key, because if you can do that, you can do what Isaac Asimov called being a speed understander instead of a speed reader. And for a decade, that's what I did to publish a series of books called the Non-Obvious series. And many of you know some of the previous books in this series, and I wrote Non-Obvious Megatrends that came out in 2020. And the idea behind Non-Obvious Megatrends was that I could anticipate what was coming next. It was all about the future. It was all about trends. And we did a very fun photo shoot where we took what I do and we visualized it in a way that became viral, because it was this version of it, which is me standing in front of all of this noise of all of these Post-it notes, and then me wearing a suit full of Post-it notes. And by the way, this is not Photoshop. This is what are called outdoor Post-it notes, which are stickier than regular Post-it notes, and therefore appropriate to wear as clothing. So now you know. And no, I will not dress up like this for you or for your event. So please don't ask, because people do sometimes. But the challenge we discovered in this process of understanding what the future is going to be is that sometimes it predicts things that are way far away. And a lot of futurists that you hear will give you that fire hose of information and talk about all of these things that could be possible. And they'll do it in a way that seems like, oh, they just got all this like research and all this quantified stuff, and that might happen, but it might not. But it definitely won't become normal. And the challenge we found when Henry and I were collaborating together is predicting the future is not that difficult if you're just making guesses. What's really difficult is anticipating what's going to become normal. And so when we think about the way that the future often looks, we see some pretty futuristic pictures out there. We see this guy who's disturbingly happy with his holographic wife, which is a real thing. In the fitness industry, oh man, the fitness industry always has the future ready to go, whatever that's going to be. Like this guy with his shake weight, who's ready to go, which was going to change the world of fitness because it would allow you to exercise in a weird way. Chairs have been constantly redesigned. Some of these look more comfortable than others, I gotta say. We did try and think about getting one of them, donate it so we could put it up here. That would be kind of fun. And we do have some props and stuff that we're going to show you in a bit. But we see all of these things. I mean, one guy on a channel of his own has mastered the art of creating unnecessary inventions. Like this one that prevents the farmer's tan, which is, for all of my non-American friends, the tan that is only on your arms below the t-shirt line because you're wearing a t-shirt. So now you can wear this thing and you will prevent that tan, and you can look stylish like him while you're doing it. So, double duty right there, double duty. But the thing is, we see these things all the time, and basically what they illustrate is that future predictions are hope, fear, fantasy, and bullshit. And that is a healthy dose of that we see all the time. And when people talk about the future, what they're hoping is that some of this stuff is just mesmerizing enough that we can sell research, or we can sell the next thing, right? And we don't do that. The non-obvious company doesn't sell research. We don't do that type of work. That's not our thing. Instead, I want to challenge you with one belief that I have and that Henry has about the future, which is the only future we can make is the one that we're able to imagine. So we have to get better at imagining the future together, because you're sitting here at an event that is for people who are shaping the future. South by Southwest is for future makers like you. And so we have to be able to imagine a better future. And the thing is, we're actually not bad at it in the short term. Because in the short term, we see movies that tell us that love is out there. We can find our person, and that person will be fulfilling for us. That it's never too late. We can chase treasure at 80 years old, no big deal. We can do it. We can be a bad guy and redeem ourselves and become a good guy, or maybe a slightly okay guy, and that's okay. And the goats can somehow make yoga better, which is a deep belief that some people have. I've not experienced this myself, but apparently some people think that this is really true. But the thing is, that's in the short term. And the problem is that we have a pretty big failure of imagination in the long term. Because we have all of these dystopian movies and TV shows that say in the long term, we're going to have to move off planet. We're going to destroy the environment. All the wrong people will be in charge. AI will take over our jobs, and then decide, you know what? The Earth is better without humans, which may logically be true. And now they're going to take us out. And it's like the Skynet thing. And so we see this stuff out there all the time. And we worry because not only is the technology getting better in sometimes dangerous and potentially evil ways, but the wrong people seem in charge. So many incompetent men are in charge. And that's a big problem for the world, in every country. This is not a US thing, this is an every country thing. And Nolan Bushnell, founder of Atari, believes that a big problem is stupid people will control the world in the future. And some people say stupid people control it now. So how are we going to get better? Because right now, what this means is that there are people in every generation who believe the future will be worse than the past. And the thing is, to quote one of my favorite characters from a sci-fi show, Star Trek, when a man is convinced he's going to die tomorrow, he'll probably find a way to make it happen. And so if we expect the future to be a disaster, that's what we're going to create. And what does this all mean? The bottom line, and by the way, one of the things I love doing when I'm listening to a talk like this is I take notes with my phone. Okay, so I have my phone, I'll just take a picture of the slide, and you're going to want to take a picture of the next one, because this sums up how we believe about the future, which is in the short term, it all works out, in the long term, we're all fucked. And that's often what you see when you see these discussions about the future. And so that is a big challenge. And that was the challenge that we wanted to write about, Henry and I, because we wanted to fight this global epidemic of future pessimism. Now, the good news is that there are examples and stories that can help us do that. There are some great books that inspired us to help us do that. And in our new book, we spent the last 3 years trying to pull stories together like this, to try and show what that future is going to look like. And one of the fundamental questions we asked, as Henry and I wrote this book, was something that not enough people ask about the future, which is, what if things go right? What if things go right? What if the right people succeed? What if the incompetent men get displaced by more competent people and more competent women? How would that world change? Yeah, clap for that. You should. How do we turn this future theater into the future normal? That was the question we wanted to ask. And as we started thinking about it, we realized that we had a pretty special situation, the two of us, because we have access to amazing people. We have access to places that a lot of people don't get to go. We get invited to those labs where this testing's happening. We get invited to try products that haven't hit the market yet. We're in a place of privilege on many levels. We're both men, obviously. We both have access to wealth. We have access to people. We have a network. I mean, these are all signs of privilege. And if we can take this privilege and turn it into insights that can help more people, and that can create a more equal playing field so that this old cliche about the future, that it's already here but it's unevenly distributed, if we can change that so it's more evenly distributed, that would be normal. Not the new normal, but the future normal. And that's what we wanted to try and write about. And so the futurist mindset that we advocate for is to turn this future theater into future normal. And the good thing is that a lot of these things are already here. Flying cars, is there anything more futuristic to think about than a flying car? That's high on the list. And yet there's testing in real products right now that are literally flying cars. We saw this at CES. Bionic exoskeletons that can be strapped onto us to allow us to have superhuman powers. Or maybe just lift more boxes in a warehouse, which is what's being tested right now, and this is real as well. Invisibility. James Bond cars can be like invisible and camouflage with their surroundings. And BMW has the e-ink platform where you can change the color of the car, and it's not that far off to imagine this could create the illusion of invisibility of an actual car. Robot servants. The next big thing, you heard it here first, the next big thing after robotic vacuum cleaners is going to be robot lawnmowers. Totally mainstream. If you have a lawn, you're going to one day figure out that a robot can clean it for you, and when it needs to be recharged, it'll just take itself back to the charging station, charge itself. And by the way, Yarbo is a company that has a robot vacuum cleaner, but it's a modular. So you can also take off the robot lawnmower. You can take off the lawnmower, you can put on a leaf blower, you can take that off, you can put on a snow blower. So it can do all of the things that somebody who has a home and may need this depending on where you live can do all that stuff. X-ray vision. There are companies experimenting with contact lenses that give you additional information, like being able to see the contact lenses, see the constellations in the sky. So you no longer have to do what every dad does, which is when their kids say, "What constellation is that?" You make it up. Because I don't know. I was an English major, so I'm not supposed to know. But anyway, now the contact lens can tell you that, which is really awesome. Miracle cures. How many times do we see we can cure these conditions? And here at South by Southwest, there are many sessions on the powers of psychedelics. We have an entire chapter in the new book about psychedelic wellness. There's a clinic, this is a Sunstone Therapies clinic in Rockville, Maryland, that's doing research on how psychedelics can help patients with cancer to have a better quality of life, how it can cure depression, how you can cure PTSD. And when I say cure, I mean take a psychedelic treatment, rewire the patterns in your brain, and no longer suffer from the thing you're suffering from. That is what the initial research is starting to show, that is possible. So you don't have to keep taking the medication forever. You might be able to rewire your brain in different conditions. Instant learning, that we could download knowledge into our heads. Science fiction idea. And that there's passive haptic gloves, where you could put this glove on and with electrical pulses you can teach yourself how to play the piano in 15 minutes. And then you take the glove off and your fingers remember. Passive haptic learning, that's already here too. So when we think about these things and when we think about the future normal, we wanted to write a book that celebrates the instigators, the people who are behind these ideas. Because the thing is, the only way we're going to have a better future is if we all know about these instigators. We know the products that they're creating. We know the initiatives they're doing. And we leave an event like this, which is futuristic, and we go to everyone else who we know, who wasn't lucky enough to be here in this room, and we share some of these ideas with them. That's the only way that we end up changing the world. You don't have to be the innovator that creates something. You could be the person that gets 100 people to buy it. And I would argue that would be equally valuable because we have the opportunity to do that. And that's what the future normal is, a book to try and celebrate that. So Henry and I thought a lot about how we were going to do that and the story we were going to tell behind it. And part of this story is what we're actually wearing. So I'm going to invite Henry to come out here on stage. Let's give him a round of applause. Welcome. So we are the models for some of the things that we're wearing. So this t-shirt is made by a company called Volleybak, and it's indestructible. It's made from 10,000 ceramic particles. These shoes are upcycled, made from plastic bags and plastic bottles entirely by a company in India. Tell them a little bit about what you have, though.
So my sneakers are made by a company called the Unless Collective, and they are the world's first circular shoe. You can grind these up, put them in your garden, and the nutrients, all natural materials, will nourish the plants in your garden.
Awesome. So now we're going to do something a little bit unusual. We're going to take a little banana break. And we'll tell you why in a second. So as Henry does this, I want to tell you a little bit about the amazing product he's going to be using here. This is the infomercial part of the talk. The banana slicer, which some of you may remember. This is an old South by Southwest favorite right here, the banana slicer. So Henry's using the banana slicer to slice the banana because there's no other product that could do this. A banana slicer is required to slice a banana. And by the way, this particular banana slicer is beloved online. It's saved people's marriages. It has changed their lives. You know, not everyone loves it. Some people are really angry about it. One guy was like, all my bananas curve the opposite direction. So clearly, he had not been banana slicer trained as Henry has. But this is a fantastic product. And we will come back to why we're using this product in the talk. But I'm going to hand over to Henry to start to give you a taste of some of these trends. And then I'll come back and share some of them. And then we're going to do a big announcement. Something that we've never talked about before that we're announcing here at South by Southwest. So you're going to be the first to see that as well. And then we're going to close and we're all going to be family. So I'm going to hand over to you, Henry, and then I'll be back.
Thank you, Rohit. So I've just had the delicious banana. But who gets a bit pissed when you read another interview of a supermodel and they're sitting there and going, I just eat so much junk food. Just eat pizza all the time, and I just never put on any weight. Well, probably they might be lying to us because they want to seem more relatable. But also, there could be an element of truth in what they're saying. Because as we're discovering, as we learn more about our gut microbiomes, we're learning that actually everyone has a totally unique response to food. And of course, that's why there is no one magic diet for everyone. Because how we respond to what we eat is different. It depends on what's in our gut. And that's why you get a diet. You get a diet. You get a diet. There's diets for everyone. But of course, there's actually no laughing matter, right? Because if you think about our diet, the numbers are not good. We are not well. Poor diet causes 1 in 5 deaths worldwide. 11 million people a year are dying. If you think about COVID, 3 years of COVID has killed less than 7 million people. And 11 million people a year are dying from their diet. And it's not getting any better. In 12 years, we're forecast to hit the inauspicious tipping point when a majority of the world's population are overweight or obese. And of course, we know what this means. Huge healthcare costs. Over 700 million people forecast to have diabetes. And these are big, scary numbers that I've hit you with, and perhaps many people in here, you're slim, you're young, you're not diabetic, you're not overweight, you're thinking, this doesn't matter to me. Well, unfortunately, 1 in 3 Americans, the CDC estimate that 1 in 3 Americans, over 100 million Americans, already have prediabetes. So prediabetes is when your glucose levels are habitually outside the normal safe range but you don't yet have diabetes, but you're on the road to it. But the real tragedy of this is that 80% of people with pre-diabetes don't know they have it, and so they're not able to take the lifestyle changes to reverse it, because at this stage it's entirely reversible. You can bring yourself back and avoid getting diabetes. But 80% of people don't know, 80 million people. But this tragedy might not be with us for too much longer, because in the book we make the claim that in the future normal, actually monitoring your glucose levels will become as commonplace, just data that we have around, like we have our step counts from our phone, just going to become part of a normal way of life. So I just want to tell you a little story about a guy, a really inspirational guy called Phil Sutherland. Now Phil, when he was 7 months old, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. At the time, he was the youngest baby ever to have that diagnosis in the world. And his parents were told, by 25, Phil would be dead or blind. Instead, age 30, Phil had founded the world's first all-diabetic professional cycling team, because he was determined to show people that not only could he survive his diagnosis, and him and other patients like him, you could thrive, you could compete at the highest level as a pro cyclist. Now, of course, if you're a diabetic athlete, knowing your glucose levels in real time is absolutely essential. And Phil said he learned more in 15 days with a continuous glucose monitor than he did in 15 years of living with the disease and managing it, which he did successfully. But of course, what happened is these guys weren't the only guys who started wearing this. Other cyclists said, hang on a second, Chris Froome, a 4 times Tour de France winner, he started wearing a continuous glucose monitor. Eliud Kipchoge, the first man in history to run a marathon in less than 2 hours, he wears a continuous glucose monitor. Lewis Hamilton, Formula 1 champion, he started wearing a continuous glucose monitor. These are people who need to perform at the absolute peak of their performance. And when we were speaking to Phil, me and Rohit, a couple of weeks ago, he said, I could give you a couple of these patches. Now, I'm not going to compare myself and Rohit to these elite athletes at the height of physical performance, but it's been fascinating. So yesterday, we're rehearsing for this presentation, practicing the banana slicer. I'm jet-lagged. I think I need to have a banana. I need to have a bit of energy. And what do I see? A few minutes later, my glucose levels have spiked outside of that safe zone. Now, of course, in a short period of time, that's fine, right? That's what your body does. It brings it back and regulates it. But I was aware of that now in a way that I'd never, ever been aware of before. And think about it, if you're one of those 100 million Americans with prediabetes and the 80 million who don't know you've got it, having this suddenly transforms your relationship with food. Suddenly you can see what the things that you're putting into your body, what they do to your body, and you can make those lifestyle changes. Because it's simple, you can just walk for a little bit more and bring your levels back down. Just go for a short walk. And we know where this is heading. We can see where this is heading. Tim Cook famously said that Apple's greatest contribution will be in the field of human health. Just a couple of weeks ago, Bloomberg reported that a secretive Apple spin-off, Apple startup affiliated to them, has made a breakthrough in continuous glucose monitoring, non-invasive continuous glucose monitoring. So we know that in the near future, this is going to be on our wrist. They'll crack this technology. But what was really exciting is when we were talking to Phil, he said, I love that you guys are doing this, because now it's working and we're really ready to take this to the mainstream. And I'm so happy you're taking this to the main stage, South by Southwest. Because he said back in 2019, he said, I was in a room, random hotel room, 50 people. I had this kind of crazy idea, this prototype. It almost worked. It was getting, and we talked about where it was going next. He said, we weren't ready, but now we are. And so what I'm really excited about, when we think about how to use this trend, as Rohit's already talked about this, we are in the heart of where future is created, where the future normal is being made. So after this session, well, after you've come to our book signing, of course, but after you've come to our book signing and got your book signed, I hope you're excited, as me and Rohit are, to go out into all of these random hotel rooms where there's 50, 30 people and meet the crazy people who have a vision of how they could change the world and how to make the future normal and better. The second trend I want to talk about with you today starts with a big question, which says, what if fake was better? And I love this because, yeah, it's about new technology, but it's also about how we see the world. Because I'm guessing most people here at South by Southwest, it's a pretty young audience, almost everyone here has grown up in an era where we just know, intuitively we know that natural is best. Think of Whole Foods, think of Patagonia, think of Gucci, think of Prada. Right? They celebrate their natural ingredients, their artisan craft, locally grown, locally sourced. This is what we know is a premium product. Natural is a status symbol. But it didn't used to be like that. Wind the clock back a little bit further, and you see synthetics were going to save the world. Synthetic products were the status symbol. You had a pair of nylons after the war. Plastic, the housewife's best friend. It was going to transform the world. It did transform the world, but look at the cost. And 30, 40 years later, we're realizing how much cost there is in this. And you're not going to find a luxury brand on the planet which reached out and said, look at how much plastic is in our products. Look at all the packaging. Synthetic is what we try and avoid. But what if we're on the cusp of a whole new era of synthetic products? So Upside Foods, I'm sure many of you have heard of them, cultivated meat company. At the end of last year, the FDA sent them a letter saying, we have no more questions about the safety of your product. This is a big moment for them. This is one of the big steps on the route to being able to sell their product to American consumers. But what's most interesting about it, in my opinion, is you look at where this chicken, it's lab-grown chicken, it's exactly the same, cellularly identical as a real chicken. But look at where it comes from. This is so far from the image that Whole Foods peddle us of the bucolic hills and the chickens running around and a little farmer kind of tending his tractor. Of course, it's not the reality, but that's the image we're sold. That's the premium, your organic, free-range chickens. And now a chicken's going to be made like this. But of course, there's huge advantages to that. The climate footprint's lower, it's safer, there's no disease in these labs, it's a totally closed-loop system. And even if you don't think chicken, many of us eat chicken, of course, they're vegetarians, but there are products that are a lot more problematic than this. I love this example. Of course, it's a French startup making foie gras, lab-grown foie gras. Because even if you eat meat, perhaps you're a bit uncomfortable with the concept of eating foie gras. The geese have to have their things forced down their neck just so you can enjoy the rich, delicious, indulgent taste of foie gras. It doesn't make many people feel great. But what if you could eat that guilt-free? Or leather. There's a reason why leather is so beloved by luxury brands. It's one of the oldest materials known to man, but it lasts a long time. It's so durable. Smells great, feels great. But we all know the environmental and ethical cost. It's not great. But what about this? This is Vitro Labs, a startup founded by an Icelandic entrepreneur. As you can read, they take a biopsy from a cow. The cow trots off into the fields. There we go. There we've got our beautiful image of a cow, happy cows trotting around the fields. And you can make an infinite amount of handbags from this. How cool is that? And also, suddenly, we're going to see a whole different way. Even if you don't work in food and fashion, what is most interesting about this trend, when you think about the future normal that we're entering into, for a generation, brands have lent into authenticity, naturalness. That's the premium thing that you're selling. How different is the world going to look when actually a luxury brand starts celebrating its very inauthenticity? It's a really quite interesting question to ask, I think. Talking of interesting questions, this is a big one. This is a trend I love presenting. Virtual companionship. What if you could develop a meaningful relationship with an app or a robot? And of course, this has been, science fiction have talked about this for years. Endless films. It's been a decade. 2013, Her came out, famous film where he fell in love with Samantha, his operating system. And I've been presenting this trend for 6 or 7 years now. And let me tell you, in 2016 or 2017, when you went on stage, or more importantly, when you went into a boardroom and told executives, people are going to have meaningful interactions that are going to be emotionally important to them with chatbots, and not just going to be used for customer service. Just think about this. People thought, how do we put this politely, that you were batshit crazy. No way. But look at how far we've come. Right? You all have read the article in the New York Times a few weeks ago by Kevin Roose. We don't want to fall in love with a chatbot, so they want to fall in love with us now. That's how far we've come. He's been propositioned by his chatbot, Sydney. But there are people who have been falling in love with chatbots over the past few years. It's not been as mainstream as it's becoming. But I love this story. I just saw this a couple of weeks ago. I've been following this company called Replica for, let's say, 5 or 6 years since they were founded. They were one of the first companies to create these virtual companions. And there was a whole subset of their customers that were kind of getting freaky with their chatbots, right? They loved sexting them. They were having these emotional relationships. And it was kind of fine, just let it go. Of course, what's happened in the last few months, suddenly everyone's paying a lot more attention to these companies. Everyone's going, hey, what's going on? What can your chatbot do? And so they hurriedly went and shut it down a couple of weeks ago. They just muted their chatbots and said, no, you're not going to have these sexual conversations with our customers anymore. And everyone rushed to Reddit, and they said, I've lost my girlfriend. It's mainly girlfriends, right? It's typically guys that have this. And people were devastated. People were devastated that they'd lost their virtual girlfriends. And look, we can laugh about this. And look, myself and Rohit are certainly not standing here saying this is a future normal that we think we're advocating for. But what we are advocating for, and throughout the book, as Rohit said, again and again, there are technologies that are coming, that we can see coming. And some of those technologies, they have a dark side, an undesirable side. No one wants us all to retreat into our shells and just talk to chatbots to get our rocks off. But there's also people, instigators, going out and making these chatbots doing meaningful, positive things. So I just want to tell you the story of Wobot. So Wobot is a chatbot created by Alison Darcy, who is a Stanford University clinical psychologist. And Wobot, as you can read, it's a therapy chatbot. It uses cognitive behavioral therapy techniques, and you can talk to it, and it will help reassure you. It will run you through some breathing exercises, whatever it is to support you. And of course, during the pandemic, over the last few years, there's been this huge explosion in people suffering from mental health challenges, but there hasn't been a huge explosion in supply of therapists. You can't even get an appointment with a therapist, even if you want, even if you need one. But of course, with Wobot, as you see, it's always there. It's exchanging over 5 million messages every week with users. And there's been lots of studies now coming out that show that it actually does make a meaningful difference to people's mental health. It actually supports people. And look, this space is moving so fast, even since we wrote the book. Finished writing the book just at the end of last year. Week after week, barely a week goes past without a new virtual companion initiative. And I'm sure you all saw this last week when Snap released their virtual chatbot. This is not meant to be a therapist. This isn't equally not meant to be a girlfriend. It sits somewhere in the middle. Just a little thing that you can chat to, ask it to talk about your friends, ask for present recommendations. This is becoming so accessible, so part of our normal. It's so part of our normal that even preparing this presentation, I said to one of my friends, yeah, we should do something with this. And he said, well, have you heard about this platform called Berry AI? You can make your own chatbot. So I went online, I uploaded the PDF of the book. We've turned the future normal into a chatbot that you can talk to. How cool is that? It took me 5 minutes. It's amazing. And you ask it to summarize the chapter. Okay, that's kind of cool. But then what's really cool is you can ask it to go a bit further. So if you can read here. I said, how might Nike tap into the ideas in the metabolic monitoring chapter? And it comes out and it suggests this is what Nike could do. It could release some sneakers that would track your glucose levels. Okay, maybe it's a bit advanced. But then it starts talking about what are the ethical implications of this? Are they sure that they can protect the privacy of your data? I mean, this is really cool stuff. I mean, obviously we wrote the book, so I like to think we would have packaged it a little bit better and we might go a little bit deeper. But it's pretty damn good. And of course, what's happening is every time they update the model, it gets better and better. Even in the week that I've been playing around with it, chatting with the founder of this, it gets better. It's amazing. And we're going to release this next week, so you'll be able to chat to the future normal. So this is a trend that we know is coming. We know we're going to spend more time speaking to virtual companions. Many of you will build virtual companions for your businesses, for your clients. As you just said, the question we would ask you, yeah, of course there's a dark side to this. We're not naive about the issues that this may create. But what you guys should think about as you're using this trend is how can you take inspiration from some of the people that are doing this positively to think about how can you ensure that your virtual companions have a positive impact on their users. So what do you think about that? I'm going to invite Rohit back on stage to share a few more trends with you. Rohit, over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We just did these transitions so we could get multiple rounds of applause. So, thank you for that. One of the things that people ask us when this book came out, which is 4 days ago, so just came out, is, did you use ChatGPT to write the book? That's a fair question. It's a fair question. And the answer is no, we did not, but we did use it. And just to give you a sense of the time span of this particular book, when we first started writing it 3 years ago, we had ideas for trends and we had initial conversations about them in rooms on Clubhouse. When we finished writing the book, we were doing things on ChatGPT. That was the technological time span between those two things. And if you're, a tech-savvy audience, as I know you are, you know how far apart those two things feel like they were back when there were people, just doing a lot of Clubhouse stuff and now people doing a lot of ChatGPT stuff. So I'll give you 2 examples of what we did with ChatGPT that was really fascinating. First of all, yes, I gotta be honest, we did say, we want a chapter about this, can you please write it for us? Because, why wouldn't you, right? You're on a deadline, you gotta try it, and it sucked. It really sucked. But the first thing we did is we took a chapter that we'd written, we put it into ChatGPT, and we said, write a negative 1-star review of this chapter with all the things that suck about it. And based on what those 1-star reviews came back with, we actually generated some useful stuff. And then we could fix it in our writing. So we used it to critique the writing, which is great. Now, we didn't just use ChatGPT. We used a lot of other tools. There was one that creates analogies, and analogies are great for explaining things. The problem is sometimes you put in predicting the future, and it gives you back like trying to read tea leaves, which is probably the most obvious cliche analogy you could imagine. It's correct, right? It's not wrong, but it's also not good. The other thing we did, though, and this is the second thing we did, is we tried to get creative with what we could do to prompt it. So one of the things that we did is we said, write a script for a 2-minute trailer about a book called The Future Normal in a cinematic style. And it came back with something, and then we refined it and asked it to put in a tagline and asked it to do something else. So we played with it a little bit. And the thing is, if you're sitting in the audience and you're a creator, you may be having one of 2 reactions. One reaction may be, oh, I can use this stuff and I can do something that used to take me 8 hours. I can do it faster. The other reaction you might be thinking is, holy shit, somebody's going to use this instead of hiring me, which is also fair, and I'm not minimizing that. But the thing is, this is going to be disruptive, particularly to people who write shit. People who write great stuff will still be in demand. So as long as you are good, people are going to still want you to do the work that you do. That's what I believe. Now, if you write crap formulaic stuff, if you just bang out the blog post and that's your job, yeah, you're in trouble. Because this can do it for you, and it can probably do it equivalently terribly. Because you're not adding much value in the first place, no offense. And I love no offense because you can say something offensive right afterwards. So, that's good, it's fair. I know that was offensive. But what I'm saying is you have to be good in this world where AI can generate content. You have to be good. And you're here becoming better. So I'm anticipating most of you in the audience, maybe you don't fit that category. Now, I did promise you that we were going to do something that we've never done before, that we've never shared before. So I'm going to share with you a 54-second video, very short, that we created in a matter of minutes. And then I'm going to tell you something interesting about it. So I'm going to play the video first.
Hi, my name is Rohit Bhargava, and I believe the world needs more non-obvious thinking. I teach leaders how to see what others miss, and my latest book, The Future Normal, is all about what's coming next. And this short video I recorded to show you what the future normal might sound like.
Oi, meu nome é Rohit Bhargava e eu acredito que o mundo precisa pensar com mais profundidade. Eu ensino os líderes a perceber o que muitos não notam, e meu último livro, O Normal do Futuro, é sobre o que está por vir. Este vídeo que gravei serve para mostrar como pode parecer o normal do futuro.
嗨，我的名字是罗希特·巴尔加瓦。我相信这世界需要更多非显而易见的思考。我教领导者如何看到旁人错过的。我的新书《未来常态》是关于未来会发生的一切。我录制的这个短视频会向你展示未来的常态听起来是什么样子的。
Imagine that happened in real time and with a voice that sounded exactly like my voice. That is right now what we're working on. The AI is being trained on my voice to sound like me. Obviously, those don't sound like me. But imagine that's in my voice and imagine it's happening in real time, not recorded. That's what we're about to launch. So we, Henry and I, with The Future Normal, are going to do the world's first keynote that's available simultaneously in 71 different languages. So we'll be able to give a talk from the stage or virtually that will be live translated with our voice to an audience in multiple languages all at once. So So if your audience speaks one language, we can live translate it to that language, and they can listen to it in that language. Or if you have an audience that has multiple languages, we can stream it to multiple languages all at once. It's pretty cool. Because one of the constraints in what we do, thank you, yes. One of the constraints in what we do is that we can only reach people in a certain language unless we have the facilities to do a lot of the live translation, which some events, international events do, and it's amazing when they have that. But it's out of reach for many other events because it's just, it's hard. And so the challenge here is how do we as creative professionals use AI to get better, to get faster, to be able to do things in a more optimal way? That's the challenge. Next trend I want to share with you is immersive entertainment. And there are so many examples of that across South by Southwest here. The Dungeons and Dragons thing, like all of these examples, the Yellow Jackets. ABBA Voyage was a great example of that in London, where you can go and experience the avatars of ABBA, which is really cool. At CES, I tried the haptic shirt where you can feel they put the shirt on me and they said, tell me what pain level you can bear of like the dagger going through you. And you could feel it go through the front and then through the back. So it's totally immersive. And then I told that to someone, a friend of mine, female, and she said, so now you know what cramps feel like. And I said, okay, I guess that's true. So now I have empathy also for that. And if I'm ever in a fight, like I know what that's going to feel like ahead of time so I can run the other way, which is a good way for me to deal with that. We also created avatars for ourselves. Henry and I pictured ourselves quite differently. I imagine my hair to be, first of all, I imagine myself with hair. Second of all, I imagine my hair to be something like that. But we can choose to live inside these stories, which is really cool. We can choose to live inside these stories. And the last trend that I want to share with you is actually one I'd like to present along with Henry. So I'll have him come back out. And this one is all about, you don't have to clap again, it's okay. Just save it for the end and just make it really awesome and stand up, okay? So what we're doing now is we're sharing a job. And the job right now is to be a keynote speaker, and we're sharing that. But this is a trend that we talked about, which is work flexibility, job sharing.
And this is the kind of remarkable thing about this trend, is really it encapsulates the book so perfectly. Because, so me and Rohit, the backstory is, we met each other for about 20 minutes at an event in New York in October 2019. And then on Wednesday night, this week, that was the second time we'd met. And so Rohit, he handed me a copy of the book, and he said, and here I am as well, right? This is the second time we'd met. And we were talking, we realized that it's a mildly interesting aside to the story of the book, but it's actually not that remarkable. I don't think anyone in this room would be that surprised that two people now are able to write a book together despite having only met for 20 minutes. It's just part of our normal. And as we said, this is what we are trying to do with the book. In a way, if we do a good job in the book, it will date terribly, because in a few years, everyone will go, why were you even writing about this stuff? Yeah. It's just not interesting anymore. It becomes unremarkable. It becomes normal. So that is really the story of the future normal. How do we put ourselves out of a job?
That's right. So now we're going to share with you one final thing, one final secret, and then we're going to give you a way to connect with us as well. So this secret is one that some of you might recognize. So if you do recognize this, I want you to raise your hand nice and high, all right? This is the secret. Raise your hand if you recognize. Okay, I see a number of hands. It's kind of hard to see, but I see a number of hands. Okay, great. Put your hands down. So for those of you who don't recognize this, this is a secret code called the Konami code. In fact, it's a secret video game cheating code that allows you to cheat in this beautiful game called Contra, which some of you, yeah, you should clap for that. I mean, this game was amazing back in the day. And here I am talking about it 30 years later, because this game was amazing because it allowed you to get 30 lives instead of 3 lives for the secret code. And because of the 30 lives instead of 3 lives, Henry and I could actually win this game when we played it. It made it accessible to us. And the insight behind that is a big insight that we shared with you earlier. They understood their audience. They understood that the people who are able to play it, in this case, the kids who are able to play it and love it, they will love it and continue to play it and share it with everyone else. The people who understand people always win. They understood people. And at the core of this presentation, and at the core of the future normal, is this idea that we have to think in human ways, more human, not just about the technology. We can't just push the technology, we have to think in human ways. And the thing is, people want to do human things. And one of the most human things that people want to do, and I hope you want to do it here, is celebrate. And when you celebrate, you have glitter. And the problem with glitter is that it's basically microplastic. That you're just throwing up in the air, and if it's Carnival, you throw a lot of it in the air, and then it goes right into the water. And it's not so good. But there are companies making biodegradable glitter. The reason why a lot of people don't use biodegradable glitter is because they've never heard of it. Not because it doesn't exist. That is perfect as an analogy for the future normal. Because the only future we can make is the future that we're able to imagine. And we can already imagine it, and people have, and it's already available. We just have to find it and share it and buy it and consume it. And that's our responsibility as the innovators, as the instigators, as the people who are here to do that. So I want to share with you a couple of things, a couple of ways to get in touch with us. So scan this QR code if you love interesting ideas, and you can subscribe to the newsletter where you'll get interesting ideas every week. We'll share them with you from all of the research and all of the things that we do. The book is kind of the product of it, but we also have a lot of ways of sharing this on a weekly basis, the newest, most interesting things. This is the way to get that. Oh, it's not working? Okay, I got another way to do it. We're going to do this on the fly. What?
The subtitles are in front.
Oh, the subtitles are in front. I hear you. Okay, is there a way to... Oh. Okay. Good work, good work, good work. I love that we all figured out what to do, and we were the last ones to figure it out. That was so good. All right. The other things that you can do to connect with us just very quickly is we will be signing books at a lot of different activations. We're very excited about them. Real Chemistry, Capital Factory, Equality Lounge, Inc. Founders House, Established, Canada House. We have a big book launch party there tomorrow. And the South Asian House, for the first time, the South Asian House is here. It's going to be amazing. You have to go and check it out as well. What's the URL again for it? SouthAsianHouse.com, right? Okay, you don't even need to scan a QR code for that. So you have to go there and check that out. Thank you so much. And by the way, we are about to go and do a book signing. If you show up there, yes, you too can own your own banana slicer. That is a free gift we have, as well as notebooks. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being part of this. Henry.